Because Derek's always right.
Always
we know
right.
that. Yeah, we know that that's the case.
You've known him long enough. You should know
Yeah.
that by now. He would do anything for love, David, but he won't do that.
Won't do that.
Hey, it's Shit Talk Reviews. Thanks so much for stopping by. It's a Wednesday here, and we decided to drop in and do a little podcast quickie. I'm John. We have Derek and, of course, David in the room.
Thank you, John.
How's it going?
It's going good. For a Wednesday, it's tight.
For a Wednesday, yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I was caught off guard.
It happens. Well, we thought it would be appropriate, maybe not appropriate, but it's a big year for one album in particular. And it seemed to us that we would be remiss if we didn't address this particular album and chat about it for a minute. Of course, that album is Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. 50 years this year. Just insane.
Yeah.
So you listen to that album. Now, I'm biased. I'm a big Floyd fan. But you listen to that record, and it could have been recorded 6 months ago. There's nothing about that album that feels 50 years old to me.
What's amazing about that is that they had put out 7 or 8 albums before this.
Yeah.
So Pink Floyd, I mean, has been around for a long time.
Yeah. Founded in 65.
Yeah.
And Dark Side came out in 73. So,
but it's like, holy shit, this thing came out 8 albums later. It's like, wow, it's amazing. Yeah. Fun
Floyd fact. You may have heard some of these, the band names prior to becoming Pink Floyd. Well, we start with Sigma 6. Then they became the Megadeths, the Abdabs, the Screaming Abdabs, Leonard's Lodgers, the Spectrum 5, T-Set, the Pink Floyd Sound, the Pink Floyd, and then finally just Pink Floyd.
I used to make Pink Floyd the name of all of my characters in early video games, like RPGs, and people made fun of me. But it was interesting because growing up, my mom loved opera and Broadway, and my dad loved the Moody Blues and Elvis, and I'm like, I needed to find something different. And so prior to Slayer, boom. That was what I found. And Dark Side of the Moon was a staple of my young life. And the ebb and flow, of from song to song, it is an album. It is an experience that is meant to be listened to start to finish.
But for a concept album, didn't you think it was different from The Wall and the Final Cut? At least to me it is, because this is a concept album. And if it's on mental health, it's on Syd Barrett. I could go on and on what this is about, or whatever they were going through at this particular time. But totally different album from The Wall or the Final Cut, where it had that, I don't know, John, you can help me. It had that flow of something, but this
blues and gospel.
This to me was more just songs on a track than those other albums. That was a story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I wouldn't argue that.
Like, I don't think this is Pink Floyd's best album by far. I don't.
Well, we disagree, but
I don't. I just don't.
That's fine. The matter of opinion. Again, I would take even if it's wrong.
I would take Final Cut, The Wall, or Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Well, the Final Cut is one of my all-time favorite Floyd.
Why is Dave here? I just why are you tearing it down? It's not your favorite one.
Okay. What do you want me to do? You want me to get on here and just say how great it is?
Yes.
It's not the best Pink Floyd album to me. It's not. This isn't.
Opinions and assholes.
Yeah.
Which is, opinions and assholes.
Yeah.
Unbelievable record. I think you'd be hard pressed to argue that it is an amazing record, even if it's not your personal favorite.
I think it's for its time. Its timing was perfect for this time period. I think if this album came out before or after this time frame, it wouldn't have been as effective. That's all. I think the timing of this album was spot on.
Well, speaking of time, and you run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking. racing around to come up behind you again. The sun is the same in a relative way, but you're older, shorter of breath, and one day closer to death. It is a perpetual reminder for many generations to live life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the song Time is such a perfect song, and it's perfectly placed in the record. It has a wonderful pacing to it. And that reminder to fucking live continues to inspire me every day. And in my darkest hour, Time is a great song that, starting off with the chimes right at the beginning, wake up and go live. It's awesome.
I think it's another thing that's so great about the record is how, and Pink Floyd is known for always having been a fairly experimental band and pushing some envelopes, and the level to which they did that on Dark Side is pretty amazing. You know, half of an entire track is clocks, and they, you know, the work that they went through to sync all those clocks up before they recorded them. You know, and the beginning of Money, Roger Waters was out in a garden shed and he was recording, throwing pocketfuls of change into a mixing bowl or something like that. And then putting out a song that went out to become such a huge, and even now is still a huge commercial hit, that's in 7/4 time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very bizarre time signature, but they were so good that they were able to take that very strange and uncomfortable time signature and put lines over it so that it flows, and it does switch to 4/4 time in the middle, but it's such an odd count. But they make it work, and again, that's a credit to the musicianship in that band.
And Gilmore's playing on that is just tremendous, and it's stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Again, the album is great, top to bottom. Is it the best Pink Floyd album? I don't know about that. That we could sit here for days.
Well, yeah, I think there were people that would certainly argue that it is, and people like you who would argue it isn't, and that's fine.
And who am I to say? It's 45 million sold. You know what I mean?
It's the fourth biggest selling album on the planet.
Yeah.
Do you know which ones are in front of it?
I mean, just offhand, Thriller's got to be number one.
Yeah.
Thriller one.
Thriller's the top at 70 million copies. I was surprised by this. AC/DC's Back in Black is 50 million. So I guess I'm not surprised, but still a bit of a surprise. And then coming in at number 3 is Whitney Houston and various artists with the soundtrack to The Bodyguard.
I thought the soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever would be on there.
It may be on the top 10.
I'm
but
surprised it's
not here.
Higher.
It's just The Bodyguard at just over 45 million copies, and but the fact that Dark Side is again, it's a credit to the commercial appeal, the appeal to people who are deep music aficionados who like and respect different things than only commercially appeal albums with commercial appeal. I mean, 45 million copies of anything is pretty impressive.
736 consecutive weeks.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, I mean the numbers here are staggering.
Who doesn't have it? That's what I want to know. It's like,
that's
who
a great
doesn't?
point. Who hasn't heard it or have it?
Well, and every year it gets exposed to a whole new crop of music listeners too, which is great. The fact that the youngsters, the kids, are listening to it and finding it for the majestic album that it is, I think is fucking awesome. Now I'm biased, but I think it's great.
Yeah. You know what's
just
funny?
Something. Oh, go ahead, Derek.
Oh, well, no, I was just going to say, we talk about majestic. You used the word and us versus us and them. I remember putting that on my freshman year in my dorm of college and using it as like a seduction song for girls and ladies.
Did it work?
It did not. They were not impressed. And, it's a very deep song, and it's certainly not romantic at all.
Yeah.
The when you read the lyrics, it's not about romance. It's about the two sides of wars and human nature and the inclination for humans to want to go to war. But it for me, as my 18-year-old self, I thought it was romance song, and boy was I wrong.
I'm shuddering at the notion of you in a dorm room wooing co-eds
Hey, John, in 2012, the album was selected for preservation in the United States by the National Recording Registry, by the Library of Congress, of being culturally, historically, aesthetically significant. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1999. I thought that's pretty amazing.
Warranted too.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
And again, I'm biased, but and we will completely unnecessarily score this in a minute, but
yeah,
it's such a good fucking record.
Yeah.
And as you said, Derek, it's one that is, if you're going to pick any album and listen to it top to bottom, this is the one to do.
But you could do that with so many other.
Of course you can. Albums. Yes, you can.
They're one of the few bands you could just put it on and let it roll from top to bottom.
Well, I think they're one of the bands that historically took, not to say that current bands don't, but that took the time to really think through the flow and the listener's experience.
They absolutely did. And there is, and I use the term ebb and flow. It is perfectly done to take you through an emotional experience. You feel, and I still feel it, years later. I mean, my 8-9-year-old self found it, and now my 49-year-old self still feels it years later. And it, and it's also one of those albums I listen to it really loud. You don't just put it on and have it in the background, and the kids will get in the car. I'm like, why do you put up the music so loud? You got to feel it. You really have to feel it. You can't just, it's not like Britney Spears and dance music or whatever, like Muzak that you hear in the elevator and just have it in the background. That's sacrilegious for this record to do that.
It's an interesting dynamic, because Pink Floyd's like a cult band. You either love them or you hate them. Yet so many people like this album. Like, you could put a song on this and my mother might be able to identify maybe one or two songs from this. And she probably has never heard of Pink Floyd or listened to them in her life, but can hear a song from this album and know who it is, which says a lot.
Yeah.
Like, how can 40, that's a lot of people and a lot of time on the chart. Somebody's listening to this.
What it was like years, 14 years.
It's insane
on the Billboard charts here. And I don't know what the number was in Europe, but some comparable.
But
number.
For a band like Rush or Cheap Trick, a cult following type band, impressive numbers for a band that not many people like.
Yeah.
I
talking about going back and listening to it front to back and all that, listen to it. This is one where if you've got a set of decent headphones or a good system to listen to it on, it's worth it. It is worth giving up an hour of your life to just really like close your eyes and let this album pour into you, because there is so much happening there.
The Great Gig in the Sky, the perfect example of that.
Forget it.
Lay in bed, put the cans on, and my God.
Claire Torrey was the woman who sang on that.
Amazing.
She improv'd that whole thing. They gave her the gist and then rolled tape, and my God, what she gave us.
You get the chills when you're
amazing.
Yeah.
And they had Alan Parsons was the engineer, the mix engineer for that whole session. Yeah. Couldn't ask for anybody better. And he, to his credit, he shaped a lot of that sound, and thank God.
Any color you like? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, what do you do for favorite tracks on an album like this? Good luck. I mean, I have two that I love. They're all good,
Which ones?
Oh, I love Time and the Great Gig in the Sky is my two favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, the Great Gig is definitely on my list.
Yeah.
On the Run is probably one of my other tops. And again, you guys know I like the technical side of how this stuff gets made, and that sequenced synth in On the Run. It was, I think, a 7-note pattern that Gilmour plunked out on a new synthesizer he'd gotten his hands on, and then just started tweaking stuff. So it's the same pattern throughout. It's just sped up, and then he applies oscillators and filters to it. And my God, the end result is fucking
I just think the timing of this album is just perfect. The psychedelic, the whole hippie thing going on. I think its timing was just perfect for this album.
They recorded it. I know it was broken up over a number of different sessions over the course of a little less than a year, I think. And then they debuted the album live at the Rainbow Theater in 1972, and they called it Dark Side of the Moon, a piece for assorted lunatics. Right. And journalist Michael Whale of the Times described the piece as bringing tears to the eyes. It was so completely understanding and musically questioning.
Would you say that everything before this album isn't even close to what from this album on? I mean, it's two different bands, John.
I wouldn't say that, because like if you listen to metal, the track Echoes, I think that's 22 minutes. I mean, that's kind of a masterful piece of music in and of itself.
I just think Gilmour took this band to a whole nother level.
I think things changed the further away that the band got with Gilmour and without Syd Barrett.
It's fair.
I'll definitely,
true.
Go that far.
Would you prefer Waters as a singer or Gilmour singing?
That's tough because they're different singers.
Mm-hmm.
They both brought very different elements to the recordings. Both amazing singers. I mean, I'll listen to either of them all day long. But I think Waters had, I don't know what the descriptive would be for what he brought versus what Gilmour brings. Maybe Gilmour brings something that is not more commercially approachable, but commercially approachable. Whereas,
I'm Gilmour. I mean, I'm just a Gilmour guy. I like him better.
As am I. What's interesting is the Division Bell came out when I was in radio in college.
Great album.
Great album. And I remember the conversation on air. We actually used to have people call in and talk about it. And they're like, this is, there's people that called in and said, this is sacrilegious. How can Gilmour be doing this without Roger Waters? I think in life, like everything, there's an evolution. And Pink Floyd, for as long as they were around, it would stand to reason that they would evolve. Mm-hmm. And with age, you do grow apart from people. And Roger Waters went one way and Gilmour went another way. And so it goes. And it's like a marriage or a divorce or whatever, everything else. And so the music has changed over time. And so asking what's better before or after the Dark Side of the Moon is impossible to answer because it's been a long-term evolution with a number of marriages that have failed.
It's just different.
Yeah.
It's just
different. He says it that way.
Yeah. There's just so much about this record. I mean, you could talk about it for days. I could anyway. Dave might not want to. But.
Oh no, I can't. I love the album. Just don't think it's one of their best albums.
Fair.
We heard that already, Dave. You made that point.
Like for me, the final cuts is better. That's
Yeah. That's an amazing fucking record too.
Yeah.
We start up a whole separate podcast just about Pink Floyd.
Exactly. Be here all day.
We might have 4 or 5 listeners with that one instead of just 3.
So I have a challenge for you, being a musician and a producer.
Oh boy.
And on Any Color You Like, David Gilmour used 2 guitars with the Univibe guitar effect to create the harmonizing guitar solo at the second half of the song. For me, that song is like the ultimate jam song. And if you ask any of the hippies in Vermont that I grew up with, that song led to Fish. And some of the jam bands today, and even Goose.
Sure.
Hey Mark. But the bottom line is that that's an interesting song, and listen to it in that in the way of a jam band as we know it. But I'd love to see you take on that challenge as a producer and a musician.
Yeah, a friend of ours had a baby not long ago, and they named her Vera Lynn. And what a sweet little baby. And I toyed around with Vera, not anything that I would ever put out, because how do you disrespect the magical Pink Floyd by altering anything they've ever done? But I will quietly and subtly say, challenge accepted.
All right.
Perfect. I'd love to hear it. I can't wait to hear it. And we should have it on this podcast the next time we go off the metal spectrum. And
we're opening ourselves up to bouts of physical violence from certain people.
And just for the record, I would consider myself to be a musician, not so much producer, but musician. Proceed.
You got that A chord, man. You're all over it. I love that they brought in people from their road crew and staff members from Abbey Road, where they recorded it, and ask them questions that then wind up in the album. And my favorite is the one, and you can just barely hear it, when he says it's a short, sharp shock. And I found a transcript, and what this guy says, like, not to draw this out, but what he said, the entire clip of his interview was, so that was the last time I was violent, about 3 days ago. The question was, when was the last time you were violent? So that was the last time I was violent, about 3 days ago. Because the thing is, man, it's like when you're driving on the road, I mean, like, you get a person who is that rude, they're going to kill you. So, like, if you give them a quick, short, sharp shock, they don't do it again. Dig it? I mean, he got off light because I could have given him a thrashing. I only hit him once. And just, maybe it's a romantic notion or a sentimental notion, but I picture these guys having these interviews in Abbey Road Studios back in the, in the mid 60s. And it's a time that I wasn't around for. I came around a little less than 10 years later, but I don't know, this album, it's one of those records that I think you mentioned it earlier. You put it on and it just fucking brings the feels, because it is such a well done album. Yeah. It's performed as perfectly as you can get. And sure, there's flaws in there, but those flaws together, the cumulative effect of all those flaws.
And to be their 8th studio album is insane when you think about that.
An amazing band. They continued to be an amazing band. They're obviously not active now. I will say this, at risk of upsetting people. I've mentioned it to you, that the fact that they are not, we all have musicians or people maybe who we don't know, but when they go, when they die, it's going to affect you, and it's going to break your heart. Well, obviously, and I think you feel the same way about Gilmour that I do, being a Gilmour guy, when he passes, it's going to rock some people. Yeah. But I'm almost happy, and I feel fucked up saying this, but I'm almost happy that he's not particularly active writing and releasing music now, because if he died in 90, when they're still putting out amazing stuff, to know, like, well, that's it, we're not going to get any more. It already feels like they made the conscious choice to stop releasing music, at least as Pink Floyd. So it feels like it won't hurt as bad. I don't know. Is that a good point?
I mean, he has solo projects that he's done,
but it's not Pink Floyd.
It's not Pink Floyd. Yeah.
Still all great stuff.
Right.
But I don't know.
Well, he's also taken a break from that too. I mean, it's obvious when he sold his guitars for charity for, I think it was for the Earth, actually, for global warming. He kind of made it clear that he told the stories about each guitar. He made a fortune.
Yeah. Charity did.
For charity.
Yeah.
And as a result, and it kind of, that's a white flag when you're taking your cherished guitars and you are, and as he put it, giving them another life with more people to bring them joy.
Yeah,
as much joy as those guitars had brought him.
Yeah,
it kind of, that to me is the telltale.
It
sign
was a
that
signifier.
He's kind of hanging it up, and that's okay. That's a graceful way to go.
Yeah,
and and he has said that he's enjoyed being a grandfather. I don't look at him as a grandfather. And when he was playing, single, as a solo artist, I looked at him and I saw a grandpa that was just shredding still. Badass.
Vocally too.
Vocally too.
Incredible singer.
Amazing. He never lost his vocals.
No.
Never.
That the auction when he put the black Stratocaster out into the public for somebody else to take custody of it. What a huge, like you said, what a huge step that was. Right. My God, what a win for whoever it was that was able to get their hands on that. I mean, that is the guitar that, the lead from Comfortably Numb and all the music that frankly, really important, incredible music was written on that instrument. And now somebody else gets to use it.
if I won the lottery, I would build a castle for just that guitar, and I would have like a moat, and I'd have all kinds of like weird lasers that it would trigger, and I'd just I'd put it there for people to come look at and just dote upon, because it's that important, at least for me.
No,
I think for a lot of people,
it's one of those important instruments that, were it not for that instrument, yes, I'm sure would have played equally as amazing work, but it may have sounded different. It may have brought a different vibe to the music that he.
It's real life. It's real life Excalibur.
Yeah, yeah. So
to me, the band. To me, this all ended with their last album. Was that Endless River? I think it was called. Yeah. You knew it was the end. I mean, that was pretty much it. Otherwise, they're going to do their solo stuff. I think Waters does it with The Wall. He tours and does his arenas and stadiums and does his thing, but it's over now. You'll never see them probably live again.
Yeah. I got to see them in 90, I don't know.
89 for me. It was
the early 90s I saw them. Yeah. I wish I would have seen that tour as well.
Yeah.
I saw the Pulse tour, but and they played the second half of Dark Side on that tour. So I did get to see that live.
Yeah.
And I got to see it with an incarnation of the band. Obviously, Waters was out. Sid, of course, was out in 65.
I think it was later, John.
Was it
68? Maybe 67.
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, I think it was a little later.
Barrett left in 68.
68.
But I did love the more recent incarnation of the band. They had amazing players in there. Guy Pratt on bass, and so I was thrilled to get to see them when I saw them. Though that is certainly not to say that I wouldn't have loved to have seen them in the early days too.
Just quick before we wrap up. What's a better album, Division Bell, or Momentary Lapse of Reason, or The Final Cut, or this one, Dark Side of the
Between
Moon?
Momentary Lapse and Division Bell,
you had to pick one.
Between those two, God, Desert Island level.
Yeah.
Deserted Island. Ooh.
I'm going Momentary Lapse. If it's between the Division Bell and Momentary Lapse of Reason,
I would probably lean that way
I
too.
think we'll all lean towards Momentary, but Division Bell's unreal.
Now, between the Final Cut and Dark Side,
I mean, I'm going Cut.
I'm going Dark Side.
God, man,
it's tough.
That's a painful question.
Can't lose. I mean, it's a win-win.
Either way, you get and.
I just wanted to throw it out there because I know you're such a huge Cut guy.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because this is, and we'll get to this here momentarily. Well, I can't answer it.
Yeah.
I might have to have, like it's a coin flip, because the Final Cut is an fucking believable record.
I know.
So good.
Another concept album.
Yeah. All right. So let's get down to numbers.
Score it?
Which again seems fucking insulting to the band, but let's do it anyway. What would you put on it, Derek?
9.5. And the only reason why it's not a 10 is it's kind of like Gilmour not playing more solos. It's kind of like pick your favorite, artist, painter, not letting them paint.
Yeah.
And that's my only complaint about the records. There's just not enough of him soloing. But that's it. That's my only complaint.
Yeah. Dave?
45 million people bought this record. There's a reason. It's a 9.5, 10 all day.
Yeah.
Come on.
I'm right there too. I'm like 9.859.
What are we doing?
It's
a classic.
Even with its imperfections, and there are some.
It's as closest to 10 as you can get.
Can't get a whole lot closer to a perfect record.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the flow is amazing. The performance is amazing. The production is amazing. The fucking album artwork is amazing.
But just keep in mind, they have so many other albums that could be a 9.5.
True.
Or 9. You know what I
True.
mean? So many others.
But
they're a great band. They're just a great band.
I'm not one to issue marching orders, but I would say if you're one of the 3 people who hear this, please put on Dark Side of the Moon. Start at the front, go to the back.
Yeah. Especially with you two, because you're such metal guys, knuckle dragging guys. It's hard to believe, like you're the type of fans that you guys are. Somehow go back to this.
Stop being so fucking judgmental. My God, man.
Like you could love Listen, you can listen to all your heavy metal as you want, but for some reason we always go back.
It's demeaning. So demeaning.
Just trying to make a point. It's odd.
It's
an album that you go back to.
It's one of those albums.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I won't even call them guilty pleasures, but there are albums certainly outside of the metal genre that I will always go back to and love. I may not love every song on them, but I mean, I'll throw a curveball at you right now. Like,
what's your go-to album that Men at Work, you said?
Oh, well, that's always a winner. Not necessarily a go-to, but I always love it. I mean, First Under the Wire. It's Little River Band.
Yeah.
I mean, it's LRB, baby. You know, you don't get a whole lot farther away from Meshuggah than Little River Band. But it's a great record. So
my go-to is High and Dry, Def Leppard. To me, that album,
that's Derek's favorite band.
To me, that album is unbelievable. Love.
It's a good record.
That's a go-to for me.
What would you, if you had to score it right now without thinking
9.
about it? Wow.
It's a 9. It's Def Leppard's best album.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Yeah.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a treat. Like I said, it was an opportunity to get to listen to an album that I'm going to listen to on the regs anyway.
We could talk Pink Floyd all day.
Yeah, but it's 50 years old, and like I said at the top, you listen to this, and I would never just right off the bat go like, "Oh, well, it's a good album," but you can tell that it was recorded 50 fucking years ago.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like it was recorded 50 years ago.
That's a good point. Very good point.
So that's all I got, man. Thank you, members of Pink Floyd, for giving us that album and all the others you've given us as well.
Yeah. Derek's a huge Floyd guy. He's a big fan, you know. So
I was a fan of Floyd before I was metal.
Yeah,
you know,
I was too.
I was
probably as we all were.
You know, to that end, I'll tell you a quick story. Pink Floyd. I have Pink Floyd to thank for all of my interest in music. I think it was 6 years old. I'm laying in bed one night, got the little clock radio on the nightstand, was listening to Q106, the local rock station out of Lansing, Michigan, and Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 comes on. Mm-hmm. And I remember it like it was last week, laying in bed, and that it scared me. And I didn't know why, because I was fucking 6. But I remember being really affected by what I was hearing. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that it clicked, and I went like, oh, that's right. You know, that was the power of music to change the way you feel.
Right.
And so I knew, again, at 6, maybe 7 years old, that the power of it.
It's interesting.
Again, that's Pink Floyd. I have Pink Floyd to thank for the entree into music. Yeah. So it started early, and it started with Pink Floyd. Got to have it.
Hey, John, by the way, I can't believe I missed it. Love the shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, man. Earned. Nice.
You gotta support the bands we love, right?
I love it. I just noticed it.
Yeah.
Great shirt. Good color for you. Good color.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's good looks.
Yeah.
And on that front, we actually do have a signed copy of the Earn album coming, and we'll be giving it away. I'd love to keep it, truthfully, but we will be giving that away. And I actually have the same shirt coming, so one day you and I will be Quinky Dinks. And wear the...
So stop by the website, and we'll get, as soon as we have that in our hot little hands. We will.
I'm not giving anything away until we have it.
That's
but
right.
They're waiting to print it and then sign it and then send it.
So thanks, Joe.
That's going to be a great gift for a band who's going to be huge.
Indeed. Well, gentlemen, this has been lovely, and
thank you, John. This was good.
Nice. And we'll see you the next time. Pleasant. Well, more pleasant than others, I guess. At least we'll take the wins where we can get them.
Sure.
Minus Dave, beating dead horses all around us. He made his point, then he made it again, then he made it again.
That's okay. You know what?
It's fine.
Again.
He's not wrong. At 45 million copies, points are being made again and again and again.
And again and again and again.
All right, fellas. Good stuff.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.